This album was released in 1974, and it immediately confused everyone. No one knew who recorded it, and it led to some interesting conspiracy theories. Phantom's Divine Comedy Part 1 was released by Capitol Records, but it had a bit of a twist. Unlike most other releases, the songwriting was simply credited to The Phantom, and the musicians were labelled as drummer X, bassist Y, and keyboardist Z. However, off the bat, listeners were struck by how much the vocals sounded like the late great Jim Morrison, the Doors frontman. He had died just 3 years previously, leaving fans of course completely devastated. The singer had died under somewhat mysterious circumstances. There was no autopsy, for example. Only a few people apparently saw the body, and the funeral was closed coffin. And this led to some doubting that his death had actually happened at all. And this wasn't helped by the creepy journal entry that Jim Morrison had written just before he died. Weeping, he left his pad on orders from police and furnishings hauled away, all records and mementos, and reporters calculating tears and curses for the press. I hope the Chinese junkies get you, and they will, for the poppy rules the world. I couldn't even begin to tell you what any of that means, but some fans somehow saw this as a hint that he was planning to abandon his life and stage his own death. It would be an escape from the chaos that fame had brought him. So when Phantom's Divine Comedy Part 1 came out, and the singer sounded remarkably like Morrison, conspiracy theorists saw it as confirmation of their theory. Morrison had never died, and he was now releasing music again, just anonymously, under a new name. Tales from a wizard, the sorcerer told. By the way, I can only play tiny amounts of music in these videos because of YouTube's silly copyright robots, but over on my Patreon page, I upload special versions of all my videos with much more of the music for a much better experience. It's patreon.com/musicmongoose. Now, the rumour mill spun faster and faster, and the record was now flying off the shelves. The label that released it obviously didn't deny the claims. I mean, why would they? It was making them lots of money. And this just increased the frenzy surrounding the album. However, as you probably would expect, Elektra Records, who distributed the Doors music, weren't exactly thrilled. They in fact threatened legal action. And the mysterious band seemed to disappear after that. For a long time though, the mystery was never solved. No one knew who made this album. No one knew where it came from. That was until decades later. The secret was finally revealed. It turns out the whole time the artists behind the Phantom's Divine Comedy was an unknown band from Detroit, formerly called Walpurgis. And the Phantom was actually a bloke called Ted Pearson. He sang, played guitar and keyboard, and wrote all the songs. He was backed up by drummer James Rowland, bassist Harold Beardsley, and keyboardist Russ Klatt. Now, while the band themselves were pretty obscure, they did have plenty of connections within the music world. For example, their tour manager, Tom Weschler, had worked with Detroit local legend Bob Seger. And Seger also worked with Edward Punch Andrews, a music producer who could be the ticket to fame if they played their cards right. However, there was a problem. Pearson, the mastermind behind the group, while extremely talented, was notoriously difficult to get along with. We were such an intense band, it was just incredible for 4 guys. But when we were doing the album, Ted was one hard-ass son of a bitch to get along with. Producer Edward Punch Andrews agreed with this. He couldn't stand Pearson. Legend has it partly due to his regular slating of Bob Seger. For some reason, Ted totally disliked Bob Seger and always made fun of him. He felt Punch was spending too much time with Seger, saying nobody knows who Seger is, and he's an old folk rock guy. Ted called him Pete Seeger, a popular US folk singer during the 40s and 50s, all the time. Ted just really had a problem with Seger. So I'd tell Ted, nobody knows who in the hell you are. Let's get out there and get some exposure. Then he'd berate me on how cynical I was. Luckily for Klatt, music engineer Gary Gavinek had a way around this. He showed Punch the demo tapes, but withheld the fact it was Pearson's music until it was absolutely necessary, and Punch really liked it. Gavinek and Punch went on to produce the album, with Punch being the one to angle for a Doors-inspired sound. Huge thanks to DistroKid for sponsoring this video. If you're an independent artist, this is for you. DistroKid is the easiest way to distribute your music to all the major streaming platforms, including Spotify, Apple Music, TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. You get unlimited music uploads for a low yearly price, and you keep 100% of your royalties. DistroKid doesn't take any commission. That is an awesome thing for artists. This company really wants to put artists first, as it absolutely should be, and that's why I'm so proud to be working with them. I just wish there was more of that in the music industry. It's super fast to upload too. Your music goes live on streaming services quicker than any other distributor. It's already trusted by millions of artists worldwide as well. Sign up to DistroKid using my link in the video description and start sharing your music with the world today. Back to it, the Pearson-Punch duo was not to last. Eventually, Pearson decided that Punch wasn't doing enough for the band, and replaced him as manager with Mike Bailey. And this was the move that would seal the fate of the band, because Bailey was an interesting character. Alongside his musical career, he was also a notorious drug dealer, which of course rubbed some band members up the wrong way. He also put Pearson well and truly at the centre of the band's plan, sidelining the other three members and making them feel like they were just a backing band rather than actual members. We come to find out that Mike was one of the bigger coke dealers in Oakland County, and Mike didn't like me because I didn't do coke. He'd put lines on album covers and pass it around during rehearsals, and I'd say, "No, I've got a beer going here, I'm fine." So we never hit it off. And that's when everything changed. We went from Phantom, the band, to Ted being the Phantom, with us as the backup band to Ted. From the moment Bailey came in, things started to change. He took Pearson out to LA, where they hung out with Doors keyboardist Ray Manzarek. The other three members were not even given an invite. It was at that moment that Klatt, Beardsley, and Roland decided it was time to leave the band. Supplied with cocaine by Bailey, Pearson had now become impossible to work with, or even talk to, and Klatt blamed Bailey for the band's downfall. When Mike Bailey came along and started throwing all the coke at Ted, he became invincible. You couldn't even talk to Ted. Once Mike got in there, we only rehearsed a few times before Mike took Ted out to LA, to the Whiskey, to hook up with Manzarek. Jimmy, Harold and I said to Mike, "What are you trying to do to us? He's not going to start singing Morrison songs with those guys. They're not going to lower themselves to that." Ironically though, he did play with the surviving members of The Doors at Whiskey A Go-Go that same year, but that was the first and only time that happened. Phantom, or Walpurgis, dissolved after that, but Pearson continued to make music afterwards. He started the band Pendragon, and legally changed his name to Arthur Pendragon, which, let's be honest, is much cooler than Ted Pearson. Pendragon had cult success from 1976 to 1983, and then Pearson sadly died by suicide in 1999, 25 years after the release of Phantom's Divine Comedy. And speaking of confusing albums, did you know that Bat Out of Hell by Meatloaf is actually about something quite weird? Click over there for the full story on that one.